You're on CYInterview.
I'm Chris Shandek. Featured columnist Jay Billstein is with me today on CYInterview. We welcome magician Jen Kramer. She has a show currently headlining at the Westgate Las Vegas Resort and Casino called The Magic of Jen Kramer. Thanks for joining us on CYInterview today. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing great. Thank you both for having me.
Oh, you're most welcome. So, how did it feel to go back to performing in front of a live audience after more than a year off at the Westgate last week?
It felt absolutely amazing. I had really missed it. I had missed my family at Westgate, the team that I love working with. I had missed the wonderful audiences and the feeling of being able to connect with people. And it's been so exciting to be back. And over the pandemic, a lot of what I was doing was really making the show something that would work in our new normal, that would work well. So we went through every touch point from the beginning of the show to the end, to really adapt it and make it something that is just as fun and just as engaging as ever, but, you know, making sure to keep into account safety precautions and having people participate, for example, from their seats rather than coming up on stage. So being able to come back with the revamped show, with this retooled show, has been so exciting, and I've been having an absolute blast.
Sounds like a great, in these times, pandemic, ready to go, entertain, and keep a crowd safe kind of production. That's really nice to hear, and thanks for telling us about that. So Las Vegas, of course, is full of magicians. They all have different stories. There's magic on every corner here. So here's my question for you. Where do you get your magic inspiration from?
Oh, so many places. You're right. Las Vegas is really the magic mecca of the world. And I think for me and probably for a lot of other magicians, that's a big part of what really drew me to Las Vegas was the community of magicians and how many people are working on exciting, creative, magical projects out here in Vegas. And every magician really does have their own character, their own style, their own way of performing, of connecting with the audience. And so when it comes to inspiration, I find it from other magicians, like the magicians who I grew up watching on television, for example, David Copperfield, Penn and Teller, David Blaine, all of those fabulous magicians, and also just from other forms of art, from books I love to read, from movies, from even just experiences in day-to-day life. I think if you're kind of walking through the world looking for inspiration, being open to new ideas and making connections between ideas, I think just having that kind of open-minded mindset, you can find inspiration almost anywhere.
Well, everyone has a story about how they end up in Las Vegas. Did you always think that you were going to be in Las Vegas because this is kind of the magic mecca capital of the world, or was this something that just happened naturally?
So I grew up on the East Coast. I grew up in New York. I went to school at Yale. And during my college years, that was really when I was figuring out how do I take this thing that I love so much, magic, and that I'm really interested in pursuing full-time, and how do I work out the details to make that into a full-time career? And I had this inkling that Vegas would be the right place to do that, but up until that point, I hadn't spent any serious time in Vegas. I had spent a few days here or there in Vegas for a convention, but I thought, you know what, I really need to get to know the Vegas showbiz world better to determine if this really is the best place to launch a full-time career. And again, I had a feeling that it definitely could be, because I had always seen Vegas as that magic mecca of the world. So when I was in college, I took an internship with Nathan Burton here in Las Vegas, which was a great experience, and had the opportunity to spend some more time in Vegas and to learn more about what this Vegas showbiz world is all about and how exciting it is, and all of the kind of opportunity for entertainers here in Vegas. And so when I was in my junior and senior year of college, I really started more seriously thinking about, okay, let me work out the details and figure out how to move to Las Vegas and how to start my full-time career there. And so after I graduated, I moved to Vegas. That was in 2014, and I really just absolutely loved living in this city and calling the city home. It's such a special place, and I'm really just fortunate to have the chance to perform my show at Westgate here in Vegas.
What did you major in at Yale?
So I was a theater studies major, because there wasn't a major in witchcraft and wizardry, so I figured theater was as close as I could get. But there really is so much overlap between theater and magic, and a lot of my professors would allow and even encourage me to incorporate magic into class presentations and were so supportive of my passion for magic. So it was something that I feel like there's so much overlap and so much that I learned from a theater perspective that I'm able to apply to the magic that I'm doing today.
Jay?
You know, Jen, I'm so glad you're speaking about having been at Yale, because when I read your bio, it immediately made me think of Robin Williams. And the reason it made me think of the late, great Robin Williams is he was viewed as this absolutely brilliant comedian and comic actor. But what I think a lot of people may not remember about him is he had incredible classic training. I believe at one point in time he went to Juilliard. And, of course, I think when it comes to the performing arts, probably two of the most prestigious places, at least in the United States, is Yale University's theater program and Juilliard. And here you, as a magician, actually went to Yale and studied theater. And I found that absolutely fascinating, because I always look at the performers in Las Vegas and wonder if the general public understands just how much training and dedication that goes into their craft. With that said, how has your background in theater, specifically from Yale, influenced and informed your practice of magic?
Oh, well, first, thank you, Jay. I'm very honored, particularly when you mentioned Robin Williams, who is just, so talented, and I really appreciate the kind words. And I just so was grateful for the opportunity to learn about all of theater, because I think magic and theater are ultimately all about connecting with people, right? At the end of the day, there's all of the glitz and the glamour and the fun and the costumes and the presentation and every element, the music, the design choices, the choreography and the blocking, all of those details that go into making a production happen. But at the end of the day, whether you're putting on a play or whether you're putting on a magic show, I really think it's about connecting with the viewers, connecting with the audience, and having that kind of experience of genuine human connection. And for me, magic draws upon all of that in theater, but then magic also has this really special element of creating that experience of wonder, of inspiring that feeling of being 5 years old again, and kind of looking at the world through that lens of mystery, of not knowing. And I think there's something really beautiful about that as well. But just really grateful to have had the chance to study theater and to apply that to what I do as a magician.
I have had the honor and the great pleasure of being able to know and speak to a good number of performers, many of whom, when they speak, they have revealed that as children they were introverted, and that performance was a way that they could, as you say, communicate, but in their case, communicate and come out of their shell. It seems to me you're kind of a very naturally outgoing, naturally dynamic person. Is that always the case, or were you more of an introvert growing up?
Wow, that's interesting you say that. I've always been drawn to performance. I've always loved performing, but I do think there's an element of me that is introverted. I love being on stage. I love connecting with people. I love being social, but at the same time, I'm often somebody who will curl up with a magic book and just enjoy, that time of recharging and kind of preparing for those moments of being on stage and connecting. So I feel like I can kind of bring my best self to the stage. So it's interesting that you say that. I love connecting. I love being social, but I think at heart I really am an introvert.
When it comes to magic, which direction, and I don't want to give away what's in your show because we want people to come see your show, but obviously there are different kinds of magicians. Certain people have taken to calling themselves over the last decade illusionists. Certain people bill themselves as mentalists. Do you have a blend, or do you favor a blend of type of things? Do you ever head in the so-called mentalism direction? Are you more towards sleight of hand? How do you weave your performance mosaic of magic?
That's such a great question. For me, it's a show that is really focused on fun. I want people to come to the show and have a great time, and I want them to participate in the show, to feel that they were a part of the show, that they're not just viewing the show as an observer, but that as an audience member, they really get to help make the show what it is. And I say this on stage, and it's so true, that every night show that we do is a little bit different because every audience is different. And the audience for a show like mine, where I really do my absolute best to incorporate the audience, it means that the audience makes the show what it is, and I think that is such a fun and exciting element for me. It means you never know exactly what might happen, but the show is it's a family-friendly show, so it's a show for all ages, whether you're 7 or 70. I hope that you'll come to the show and have fun, have a good time with us. And it's a show that involves everything from sleight of hand, which is how I first got started in magic when I was 10 years old, with a close-up sleight of hand. And then it also involves some large illusions, which we've been really enjoying incorporating into the show as well. So everything from comedy to, you mentioned mentalism, which I enjoy. I just want to take the audience on this kind of roller coaster journey of having fun and being a part of the show.
You know, so in looking at your bio, there are so many things here. I have to come back sometime to mine out all the goodies. I see that you studied Shotokan karate, and that you, I believe you're multilingual, are you not? I mean, I find it so interesting when somebody can not only have an area of focus and concentration, but they also have other areas of skill that they've developed that they can weave into what you do. With that said, if we look at the history of Las Vegas over the last 70 or some odd years, there are certain performance arts that have tended to be, for lack of a better term, I'd say gender specific. In other words, showgirls have always been thought of as an integral part of Las Vegas. We don't really hear about show guys, even though, of course, there are male dancers in Las Vegas. And magicians heretofore had been thought of as the preserve of men. And, of course, the magician's assistant was the lovely assistant who tended to be a female. Did you, in coming to Las Vegas in the last 7 years, feel like you were breaking some kind of glass ceiling, that there was any drag on you because you were a woman, that there was any pushback, or has it been smooth sailing all the way?
Well, you're right in that magic historically has definitely been a very male-dominated field. You think about sort of the classic image of a magician with the bunny out of the hat and the female assistant. That having been said, I am so excited to see the magic world moving in a direction where more and more women are getting involved as magicians. I think an interesting example is when I grew up in magic. When I was 11, 12 years old, I joined a young magicians group in New York, and we would meet and we would share feedback on each other's work, and we'd perform together, and it was a wonderful experience. And in those years, from when I was 11, 12 until I aged out of the group at 18, I was the only girl who was a part of that group. It was always me, and it would be 15 or 20 boys sitting around the table. And I can see how that could be a potentially intimidating situation for a young girl getting into magic. Now, fortunately, I happen to have some really supportive, terrific people around me, and some of the guys in that group are still really close friends of mine to this day. But an interesting thing is keeping in touch with the group. There are now several women, several young girls who are a part of the group. In fact, the leader of the group now is a woman as well. And to hear about young girls being a part of the group, and to hear that it's something that young girls are taking an interest in. You know, at our meet and greet at the show, but before the pandemic, we would always have audience members after the show. We'd have an opportunity to chat and to get together in sort of a casual way, to take photos. And young girls would come up at the meet and greet and they'd say, "Wow, this is great. I love magic. This is something that I want to do." And to me, that was such a meaningful experience. Both seeing the young magicians group that I was in, now having more young girls joining and developing an interest, and also at our meet and greet, seeing firsthand, young girls who would see the show and feel inspired or feel that this is something that they are now interested in exploring, to me was such a rewarding experience, because magic has been this incredible, meaningful part of my life, and I would love for more young girls and more women to have that experience as well. So I'm just really proud to be a woman in magic, and also really just excited to support all of the other terrific women in magic. There are so many women in magic doing amazing things today, and it makes me really happy.
Really powerful and remarkable stuff. Right before I throw it back to Chris, you mentioned that you're from New York. I was born and raised in New York City, and it's always a pleasure and interesting for me when I get to speak with another New Yorker. Where in New York are you from originally?
So I grew up in Great Neck, and I feel the same way. I love meeting fellow New Yorkers. So
I used to play tennis on the courts, I believe, at Great Neck South High School.
Oh my gosh, yes. So this is kind of a fun fact. It doesn't come up as often usually during interviews, but I was the captain of my high school tennis team. I love playing tennis. So I bet we've played on the exact same tennis court at Great Neck South.
I do not doubt it. I grew up right over the other side of the city line.
Wow, what a small world.
Yeah, but it was now you said Great Neck. Now I've got 20 more questions, but we'll have to wait for next time because I know that Chris has a couple more questions. But so what a pleasure speaking with you, and you're just so dynamic, and your background is just so incredible. I really would urge everybody to see your show. Chris?
Thank you so much.
Jen, talking about turning the impossible into impossible to ignore, tell me about how you use that statement in the overall of your show.
Sure. I think that's one of the really exciting elements about magic, and we touched on it a bit before. It was just that element of wonder, that element of impossibility. And I think one example that comes to mind for me in something that's really inspired me over the years is I've loved working with an organization called Magicians Without Borders. And Magicians Without Borders was founded by a husband-wife duo. They are a magician and a mime, respectively, and they travel the world performing magic for people who are facing some really difficult, some really challenging situations all around the world. And through their magic, they spread hope and they spread happiness, and what they do is just so inspiring. And I first met them when I was 12 years old and have stayed in touch with them over the years and had the opportunity to work with them over the years, which I've loved. We did actually a trip to India a few years ago with a joint trip with the Yale Magic Society, and I was just so happy to be able to connect these two groups that I love so much. I had founded the Yale Magic Society when I was a student at Yale, and I had been in touch with Tom and Janet from Magicians Without Borders and had worked with them for years. And one of the things, coming back to impossibility, that I know Tom has said from Magicians Without Borders is he talks about how if he's able to take something seemingly impossible and make it possible, what an inspiring message for people who are going through something really difficult in their own lives, that something seemingly insurmountable, some challenge that it appears is just so impossible to overcome. Well, maybe there is a way to overcome it. And so when you mentioned impossible, that's what came to mind for me, because I think there's so much potential in magic, both to really connect with people and to share a really special experience with them, and hopefully to inspire people as well.
You can catch the magic of Jen Kramer at the Westgate Las Vegas Resort and Casino every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday right now at 5 p.m. Jen, thanks so much for being with us on CYInterview. Anything you want to add in closing?
Well, thank you, Chris and Jay. I've so enjoyed talking with you both, and I would love to have you at the show. And it was just a great conversation, so thanks for having me on.
So for magician Jen Kramer, featured columnist Jay Bilstein, and CYInterview, I'm Chris Shinnick.